In the last part, Lloyd, under the influence of good conditions from the old dragon man, agreed to go to hell himself. Surprisingly, the guy was well known there, or rather, he was a celebrity there, and everyone knew what a hell singer he was. As soon as the guy was in hell, he immediately went to the king, even though he didn't want to listen to the guy at first. But as soon as he heard about the possibility of getting a day off, he fell into Lloyd's trap. And now the protagonist is forced to build a railroad in hell that would save the dragon's soul and learn the membership to the King of Dragons. Guys, I am very grateful for your support in the comments. I would like to release a new part of this manhwa every day, but the chapters are over, so in 3 weeks, if this video has 1,000 likes, I will immediately start making a sequel. I am as interested as you are, so wait. I also wanted to ask you to check out some of the other videos on my channel. I'm going to start the second season of this incredibly interesting manhwa very soon, and I would encourage you to check it out. That's it, guys. I'm getting a little long. I love you guys, and have fun watching. The hero bird flapped its wings in the infernal sky as Lloyd ordered the demons to come to him if they wanted to do anything. The angry mob decided to finish the man off, so Lloyd descended to the ground with the bird and began driving the already angry demons to the ground. One of the enemies grabbed a stick and started running towards the protagonist at high speed, smashing the stick into the ground. Lloyd did not stand idly by, and with a hellish expression on his face, he threw a rock that knocked the demon out of the air with great speed, and it began to fall directly into the lava lake. The other demons were frightened by the outcome of the event, but the enemy was lucky because he fell on the only rock in that lava lake. Lloyd made a horrified face and told the demons in all seriousness that he was sorry. The angry crowd fell silent as they watched their kin nearly lose their lives only moments before. Lloyd lay quietly in his bed, as if waiting for the next demons. At that time, a group of demons had gathered in the Great Demon Community Center building to take revenge on Lloyd, gathering a whole army of hell centipedes and launching a furious attack on the man. They began to attack a huge wall, but as soon as they were near the place where the main character lived, they realized that Lloyd was missing. Suddenly, one of the centipedes began to kick, and the others began to behave improperly. A huge number of centipedes stopped obeying the demons. Now the demons were trapped by their riding animals, all moving in the same direction. At the point of recognition was a cave, in which was Lloyd himself. Xavier was sharpening his blade as if before a bloody battle. Even the pet bird looked scary, and Lloyd himself was a demon, yes, such as never existed in hell. The poor demon who had arrived in this hellish cave was absolutely terrified. Xavier completely destroyed the centipede with a single stroke of his sword, cutting it into many cubes. The next demon prayed that he would not repeat the fate of his fellow demon, and Lloyd made a mad face and called out the number 2 to indicate the demon, after which remnants of the sword appeared near his body. As Lloyd dealt with each demon that entered the cave, time passed. 28 of them were destroyed, and after an enormous amount of time, Lloyd sat on a mountain of centipede corpses and called out a number that exceeded 30,000. Lloyd was unbelievably creeped out, though inwardly, he was glad to have gotten the building material. Lloyd's attention was drawn to something to his right, something that appeared to be thousands of demons, nothing more than a labor force for the humans. Lloyd was in a state of ecstasy and ordered the new workers to dig. All this was being broadcast on a laptop at the time, and the watcher turned out to be the king, who was thinking of capturing Lloyd and making him the torturer. As he watched Lloyd, he wondered if it would be a good idea to entrust his position to this man. After a while, a large number of demons worked on the construction of the railroad. There were times when panicked demons tried to escape, but thanks to the video surveillance and Xavier, any such attempt was cut off, leaving the rest of the humans to wonder what would be done with the fugitive. There was a moment when the demons rebelled, guaranteeing the rights of freedom, Xavier responding to the demands only that it was the right thing to do, which left the rebels in tears. A grandfather in the factory collapsed, and a young man, disturbed by his condition, ran up. Lloyd walked over to the frail old man and held out his hand, giving the demon hope. The demon was touched by Lloyd's kindness, but a moment later was disappointed when Lloyd squeezed the old man's hand with all his might and then screamed so terribly that the demon seemed traumatized. Lloyd was a devil when he ordered the old man to lift 5 times his previous weight. The demons cried and called Lloyd the worst person in the world. But after a moment, their faces changed, and they seemed to fall in love with Lloyd's evil belly. Other demons also thought that Lloyd was a role model. As a result, not only the bodies, but also the hearts of the demons were enslaved by Lloyd. In the infernal furnace sat a small red soul. It hid behind a rock, but as soon as it heard Lloyd's voice, it recognized him. The soul immediately decided to look in the direction where the man was. Lloyd was shouting that the workers didn't need protection, but the soul was staring at the man who was telling the demons that there was no rest, and that they could only rest after death. The soul looked like Lloyd, and was shocked to see the guy in that place. It was on this terrible day for the soul that its body was suddenly taken away, and it was thrown out. The soul was furious that its body had been taken over, and it tried to break through and get the body back, but it was unsuccessful. The soul was saddened by this outcome, but when the soul saw Lloyd fighting the air and talking about annoying notifications, the soul assumed that this guy was just crazy. Suddenly, a portal appeared behind the soul's back, from which a death-like creature emerged. Old Lloyd was horrified at the sight of the Grim Reaper, but as soon as he saw the soul, he immediately called the manager because the color of the soul was surprisingly red. The Reaper asked the man to calm down and went back to the portal until the circumstances were clarified, telling the customer to wait a bit. So this soul turned out to be neither dead nor alive, so the real Lloyd stayed with us for about 2 years. The soul was angry that Lloyd was different from him, while he blamed his parents and drank a lot. The new Lloyd moved on and paid off the family debts. The soul remembered how his parents used to look at him and how things had changed with the new Lloyd. Looking at Lloyd, the soul said that if he had the same magic, he would be the same. Suddenly, the soul's monologue was interrupted by the Grim Reaper, which frightened the old Lloyd. The Reaper asked the soul if he could do the same if he had the same powers, to which the old Lloyd did not know what to say. The Reaper said that this was the first case of its kind, but also explained that the soul had nothing to do here, after which the Reaper said that they should consult with the King of Hell. The soul thought that watching the new Lloyd would only hurt him. The King of Hell did nothing because there are no laws. He couldn't reincarnate, he couldn't even disappear, and now back in the present, this soul was angry to see Lloyd. The man flew on his bird and looked at the terrible scenery of hell, and he thought that the terrain was terrible, and he had to go around in circles. He flew and thought about where and what he could do. The guy thought that at this speed they would finish quickly. Lloyd came down to check the safety of the ground, when suddenly a small soul began to carry out its attack directly on the face of the focused guy. From the blow, his cheek began to deform, and his head was thrown back. Lloyd flew away from the blow and was furious, as he didn't understand who dared to do such a thing. But before he could realize it, the guy got another blow right on his 2 eyes, which caused him a hell of a pain, and anger overwhelmed Lloyd's body. The protagonist's pet stopped the angry soul. He kicked it in the stomach with all his might, and it began to writhe in pain as the pet dragged it along the ground. The pet threw the soul right into the beaver's hands, and Lloyd approached the soul with his infernal face and yelled at it, asking who it was. Even old Lloyd was frightened at the sight of the protagonist's face. All he could think about was how damn scary this guy was. Suddenly, the new Lloyd's face changed, and as he looked closer, he realized that it was the true owner of the body. His soul started screaming that he was the real Lloyd who'd stolen his body. Lloyd seemed nervous. Now he realized that the true Lloyd was in hell. Soul complained that Lloyd was going to hell when he was doing incredibly difficult tasks. Soul started to cry as his father and mother finally loved him, but now the guy was going to hell. Lloyd seemed uncomfortable and tried to comfort the soul, but it wouldn't listen. The pet then gave the soul a healing blow to the face, and it finally began to listen to Lloyd, who suggested a negotiated solution. The soul began to scream, calling the hero's pets thugs and Lloyd himself a thief, and was hit in the face again. There was a silence, which was broken by Lloyd saying that he was not dead, but had made a contract with the King of Hell to build a railroad, and that he had not stolen Lloyd's body, but had come here by accident. The soul could not believe that his body was taken by accident, but the hero introduced himself as a boring and shy guy who studied construction in the Republic of Korea, named Kim Soo Ho. After the new Lloyd saw the soul's face, he realized that he didn't need to say anything more. The demons continued to work for Lloyd under Xavier's command. Xavier heard the conversation between Lloyd and the soul, He began to listen and gradually realized that Lloyd was talking to none other than the soul of old Lloyd. The soul screamed that it could have lived on if it hadn't been for Lloyd, and now it was a soul without a residence permit. It demanded that the new Lloyd take responsibility, and the new Lloyd thought about what he should do. And then he started to talk, which disturbed the soul a little. Lloyd suggested that it would be good to live separately, as there was no point in helping this soul. The soul was shocked by this answer, and Lloyd said goodbye to the soul. It tried to run after the guy, but got hit in the face by the hero's pet. The soul lay on the ground and cried out of hopelessness. Lloyd turned around and saw the poor soul crying and could do nothing. The boy thought about the fact that this soul was the real son of those very people. Lloyd stopped and thought deeply. He touched his hair, and with an angry look, seemed to have made a decision. He turned to the pathetic soul and asked it if it would stop whining if he helped it, but it started to sarcasm, and then Lloyd gave it a good rap with his finger. Lloyd was mad at the soul for calling him a fake. Lloyd got mad and told the soul to shut up until the end of the construction, and then he would help it. After the soul was inside the hero's cloak, it became quiet, because there were horrible monsters nearby, which were Lloyd's pets. Lloyd told the soul to be quiet, and decided to finish the construction as soon as possible, because then the soul would be quiet. The first stage was followed by the second, and later the third, which was to put the flights on the legs of the centipedes. The fourth step was to install the rails and the centipede pantsers, and finally came the fifth step. He used the animal to press the rails to the foundation. Lloyd realized that the road would be dusty and unpleasant, but honestly, he didn't care. Lloyd was determined to check everything out, and ordered the servant to keep an eye on everything. At that time, Soul wondered if this imposter had been working for a whole month without a break. Soul was shocked, because the hero simply does not party or drink. Soul remembered the Grim Reaper's words that Soul would not be able to do the same with similar powers. Soul thought deeply, but still had a bad opinion of Lloyd. At that time, the guy's pet continued to work, causing a very loud sound to come from around. Even the lava vibrated from the pressure on the ground. Suddenly, a strange creature thought that it had only slept for 20,000 years, and it was awakened by some freak making noise. At that time, the creature continued to push the flights with all its might, from which the noise continued again and again. Bulbuls began to rise from the lava lake. It was a strange creature that couldn't take it anymore. It began to pull out of the lava lake and screamed at the whole neighborhood to get some damn sleep. Lloyd was furious that some monster had stopped his construction. It complained a lot that the place was too noisy, so it could not sleep. The demons were scared and started to run away, and Lloyd also ran away and threw the demons right back, which made them admire the guy even more. The monster was in a rage and assumed that the noise was coming from the tracks, so he kicked the tracks with all his might, causing them to shatter. Lloyd suddenly stopped and screamed that the monster was a fucking bastard and started running straight at him. Lloyd shouted with a horrified expression on his face that life can be noisy sometimes, but that's no reason to destroy buildings. The monster was just as angry because some cockroach had dared to accuse him. The demons were happy because they thought that the tyrant's reign would end now. With a serious look on his face, the monster said that one of them would die today. Lloyd confidently called to Xavier, who instantly appeared beside him like an anime character. With a cruel face, Lloyd ordered the monster to show him how they dealt with such things. Xavier just looked at Lloyd, who didn't understand why the servant was standing there, and ordered him to attack. Xavier said he thought he should apologize, but Lloyd explained that he was the only one who was disturbed and insecure in this situation. The demons had already accepted Lloyd's death. They thought the man had gone mad. The monster wasn't having any of that, and pointed its legs straight at the boys. The impact caused the ground around them to crack, and not only around them, even the demons at a reasonable distance were affected by the impact. Xavier miraculously managed to save his master from this terrible attack. After tossing Lloyd a little farther away from the battlefield, Xavier immediately went on the attack. The servant immediately drew his sword and unleashed a series of devastating blows that left the monster helpless. Unfortunately, the lava began to gather and form, frightening the servant, as the monster's body began to regenerate from almost nothing. The enemy started screaming that he had just been hit, He was in full rage, and Lloyd was shocked that Xavier's attack, who is a grandmaster, didn't work on the monster at all. Well, that's all guys. I really like this manhwa, so I hope these 3 weeks will pass as soon as possible. I want to remind you that on the channel will be cold as well as no less interesting videos, so please check them out. And with you was new Page of Manhwa. See you soon.